Good afternoon, everyone. If you haven't met me, I'm David Sequeira, and I have the privilege of organising Art Forum, and I'm also the director of the Fiona and Sydney Meyer Gallery. And before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to take a moment to invite you all to ground yourself deeply in the knowledge that long before this institution was considered, or the University of Melbourne was considered, that the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation tended to this country and practiced the arts here. They shared stories, made paintings, sculptures, practiced dance, practiced healing, and those rituals and traditions continue today. And please join me with joy and honour in acknowledging their elders past, present and emerging. So our guest speaker, Dr. Alexandra Juhasz, is a distinguished professor of film at Brooklyn College, CUNY. She makes and studies committed media practices that contribute to political change and individual and community growth. She's the author-editor of scholarly books on AIDS, including AIDS TV, and we are having this conversation now, The Time of AIDS Cultural Production, and Sisters in the Life, 25 Years of African-American Lesbian Filmmaking. Alexandra is the producer of educational videotapes on feminist issues from AIDS to teen pregnancy, as well as the feature fake documentaries The Watermelon Woman and The Owls. She writes about her cultural and political commitments in scholarly and more public platforms, including Hyperallergic, Bomb, Ms. Extra, and Lambda Literary Review. Her edited anthology of community-produced poetry about fake news, My Phone Lies to Me, was published in 2022 by Punctum Press. Whether you are in Zoom land or here in Federation Hall with us, please make Alex very, very welcome.
It's such a delight to be here. I'm really enjoying meeting you all and working with you all and learning with you all. And I'm looking forward to talking to you afterwards. I wanted to thank Alex in particular for all the hard work she did to get me here. And it's just a delight to start more with you yesterday and today and now. So thank you, Alex. I inhabited with a small and changing group of queer feminist art farmers an impermanent ramshackle house in Nebraska called Victoria over one intense and also gutted month during COVID lockdown in 2021. This image and many that follow are from a zine that I made with two collaborators, queer artists younger than myself, B. Heard in her early 20s at the time, and Z. Bell in her late 30s when we were residents at Art Farm in Nebraska. Our zine is about the film we shot together called The Queering of the Corn, just at the end of my 30-day residency, simply willing ourselves into a queer feminist collective. We first started collaborating 5 years ago. I was then in my late 50s, and I am now 62. So we are intergenerational as well, with all the care and drama that allows. One day, our film will be finished, but a lot of the drama of this collective is in that work's perpetual incompletion. While at Art Farm, weeks before the realization of our collective film, and years before the zine we made, many years later, I was spending my time indexing all I had done in the past, spewing lists on my wall, hoping to see my work's nature. This was during the heart of COVID lockdown, and I, like many others, was doing a lot of accounting in a time of fear. I was suffering from long COVID, and the world was broken. Learning from disability justice and a lifetime in AIDS activism and my own enduring of long COVID at that time helped me shy away from particular words or their projects: healing, escape, resolution. I stayed with the is, a living and reckoning with, a making art with what we had and were in a place and time as a good way to be. This year, 5 years later, we made and distributed our zine, which made a place for the words I had written about queer feminist media praxis while I was living in Victoria. We put on paper what we had done and felt, what we had become and done together, why we wanted to make art together, how that lasts, and how we save and share that. I gave all this one name, my queer feminist media praxis. And this is what I will try to share today. Not so much my art and the many things I have made, but rather a term that encompasses a method and a practice that umbrellas a career of work in a variety of forms and about many themes. I will share the shape and principles and actions of my queer feminist media praxis. To do so, I will read from 3 sections of the autobiographical manifesto-like writing I produced during my weird month at Art Farm. Alongside this reading from some of our zine, I will also share short clips from 4 of my activist collaborative media projects so that you can see what I mean. My principles are not obscure, even if they may be somewhat theoretical. They come from years of doing and making with others. I hope they clarify. Of course, as I was refining this language, describing what I came to call my queer feminist media praxis, Art Farm was in a state of complete and scary disrepair. And this too became part of the theory and practice engendered in this space and with these people, the role of repair and breakdown. More on that soon enough. From Victoria, a rootless, dangerous, and communal space, I started to give words to my praxis. I understood that my feminism is a process, and queerness is one of its technologies. There are many feminisms, some personal, others movement specific. My feminism is not about anything as much as it is about everything. Because feminism is my set of approaches to the world and its ideas and systems. Here we see feminism as a scholarly book and 2 activist AIDS videos that I made in the late 1980s. My feminism is a set of orientations and related ideas and actions, practices, focused upon changing or celebrating material and ideological conditions. Here you see my second major project, a documentary and related book on the history of feminist film made from within and for that community. I will share a clip of that soon. My feminism is not about women and females or gender or sexuality. Here you see my third large project, a praxis project, a born digital book written about and with a college class, Learning from YouTube, published online by MIT. This is something I worked on in the early 2000s. My feminism is not about race, class, ethnicity, disability, the climate, the environment, the internet, film, video, politics, my family, my friends, my Jewish non-Zionism, my community, or myself. My feminism is a set of methods to engage ethically and collectively in thinking, teaching, collaborating, and making art and ideas about the issues and material conditions that concern me and others, including all of the ones I just listed and more. My feminism is good work. It is an ethical way to live. These are 2 videos about and for my community of AIDS activists made across 35 years. You will see more of these soon. Learning from and with others, I strive to change a world structured by arbitrary, stupid binaries that are also hierarchies that appropriate rights, power, access, and ways of living unjustly. I focus on these differences with others when I make art with them. My feminism is intersectional because binaries are stupid, whereas people and collectives are mutually inflecting and dense and smart. I learned this with hundreds of people around the world with whom I made poetry and videos about fake news during the first Trump administration. My queerness is a process and related methods, an amplification or extension of my feminism, a technology. It helps disrupt and refashion the world and how we live in it.
The real internet is fake. My phone tells me to look at
It
it.
tells me there's a world inside.
But when I look away, I know that's not true.
There's a world right here.
The phone asks me to look again. It tells me it's real.
But I ask it to speak.
To love.
To hate.
And I can't do that.
James and Shameen are high school students in a high school in Brooklyn where I did a fake news poetry workshop. Learning from and with others like James and Shameen, I strive to make a world structured by other systems. How did I get to the collaborative produced wisdom of My Phone Lies to Me, made by James and Shameen, and hundreds of other poems? I came to New York in 1986 at 22 to learn. I began a PhD in cinema studies. At the same time, I was a student at the Independent Studio Program as a video artist. The AIDS activist movement was everywhere around me, as was AIDS. I went to one of the first ACT UP meetings and volunteered at the Gay Men's Health Crisis, the world's first and largest AIDS service organization. I told them I knew how to make a video, which wasn't exactly true. I knew how to think about video and women and systemic injustice. I was learning how to make video. In this, my first serious piece of media from 1987, the content was political, the form and process not so much. I made a rather traditional TV documentary, speaking for and listening to people different from myself, women with HIV and AIDS, and I am not HIV positive, who are and were primarily women of color, given the racism that undergirds the history of HIV and the present. I was reenacting and reifying power imbalances written into the documentary encounter and form, even as I was exposing and sharing important analysis and information. I wanted to envision other ways to make documentary made in and about affected communities and made in a group, so voice and authority and perspective could be shared and mutable. For 6 months, this is when I was a graduate student, I taught media literacy within a support group for women affected by AIDS. We taught each other about what we knew from living with HIV in our homes or in our bodies. We decided to call ourselves the Women's AIDS Video Enterprise. We made We Care. I wrote my dissertation about it. It showed at community centers, people's homes, and at art and health organizations in New York and across the United States. There I met Juanita Mohammed Sapansky. We would go on to make more AIDS activists together for 30 years. Let me show you my first clip now, the first 5 minutes of We Care. I hope some of the abstractions I've led with will begin to take form for you.
We care. We care for people with AIDS. Why do we care, you might ask? We care because people with AIDS are people like us.
We care. I think a care provider is everybody. It's people who've never met a person with AIDS, people who don't understand people with AIDS, people who are their family members, their friends, everybody.
I think that has to be one of the hardest things that anyone can ask of you, is to be a care provider. It really is. It's tough. It's very hard to do. It's emotionally draining most of the time. And you need a very strong source of strength and support.
It can mean everything from the closest person, the person who is sexually involved with someone who is HIV positive, to someone who may only spend 2 hours of their life in contact with somebody who's HIV positive. But that essentially in our society, and this is where I really agree with you, at this point, can you imagine a person who will never be a care provider, who will never come into contact with somebody who has AIDS or is HIV positive? And if you're coming into contact, our hope is that you're caring.
Yeah.
So then you're a care provider.
Yeah. It doesn't really have to be a person. It could be care provider is like you're taking care or whatever.
Might be a book that you read and it helps bring, you know, that calmness. It could watering your plants, talking to your plants. Where's my cat? Where's my dog? You know, whatever helps you.
I really look at people they are really deteriorating. It's maybe drying up, have no kind of texture about the skin.
What an AIDS person look like? Look like me and you. Next.
It's not like if you have AIDS written up in your forehead, it's a stamp. Well, this one has, it's HIV positive. I can't go with it. It's not like that, you know?
Work that way.
A person can look so healthy and you'll be surprised because I've seen people that it's blown my mind. I would be like, I can't believe this person is infected and they look so well and they look so healthy. That's why a lot of people get confused, you know?
We care.
We care for people with AIDS. Why do we care, you might ask? We care because people with AIDS are people like us.
We care.
I'm Marie, and I'm HIV positive. Welcome to my home. I would like to sort of let you see how it is living with the person that's HIV positive. We can go through the house and we can see what is and is not different from before. People tend to have misinformation or misconception that people that's HIV positive should not be touched, talked to, or visited even. So please welcome and come in. This is my living room. It's the same as it's always been. I need a new carpet, but that's another story. I would like to let it be known that not too much different is going on in my household in the last year and 2.5 years. My family, I have a son that's 22, and there's my partner, and I have my little 3-year-old granddaughter that's with me most of the time. She's in Atlanta on vacation now, but we eat together. I cook everybody's food together. I tend to not let nobody use my glass because I've always been that way. My glass is my glass. My cup is my cup. I have a separate cup that I've had for years. You know, I don't have separate pots and pans and dishes. The only difference that I do, I keep my vitamins, my medications here. There's a lot of vitamins and most of the vitamins. I keep my medications out of reach of my little 3-year-old granddaughter, but then I kept my medications out of reach 3-year-old kids all along.
When Juanita decided to stop receiving treatment for diabetes in the darkest days of COVID lockdown, while she was living in a city-run rehabilitation center, she invited me to make our last collaboration, her deathbed video, I Want to Leave a Legacy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll loop back to Juanita many more times in this talk. For now, I want to remind us that my queer feminist media praxis is about the way I do things, not what the things are. Queer feminist media praxis is also about what the things, the art, does. This is because a significant part of my queer feminist media praxis has to do with invitation and reciprocity. Juanita asked, and so I said yes. Nothing is too big or small, too weird or uptight. You never know which event will create or produce more. That is, meet your showing up with their showing up, and thus extend to places and people and possibilities no one had anticipated. The thing that I do, my ethical, political, social practice as a queer feminist in this world, my queer feminist media praxis turns out to be nothing more than this: to show up, ready to engage, ready to listen, ready to be changed, ready to contribute when invited or as an inviter. Showing up is a kind of care. It's like cleaning the most disgusting kitchen you have ever seen, Victoria's, where all the other residents don't care that it's unhygienic and filthy. There are massive piles of dirty dishes in the sink, and on the counter, fruit flies stink and mold. This maintenance work will hardly be noticed, and it will be immediately undone. And yet it also helps and sometimes feels good in the doing. You do it because for now, at least, you have the capacity and the interest and your sense of yourself and community as an agent of more. So you show up with what you have, just that much, and maybe a little more, and extend it to others because you too will be in need. And this just system will hold you when you are tired or ill. And this just system will invite you and greet you and hold you when you are ready again to begin. I had learned this from Carolee Schneemann. Boots. I like how butch I am in my art farm boots, a gift to me from Carolee. I like laboring with my body. This is so lost in a Zoom life online. I am quite strong, and I won't always be. Carolee taught me that and so much more when I interviewed her for a second time, and she gave me her boots, the ones I wore at Art Farm. She told me, we circle in and out of ability. We all have cycles of health. I met Carolee for the first time while making my second large project after AIDS, TB, and We Care. I wanted to be situated fully in a community of which I was a member. At this time, I had become a professor of media studies. I wanted to continue the principles of production around which I had experimented. I was eager to think about community as both a local and national phenomenon of known and unknown participants, one that was intergenerational and full of difference, one that was present day and historical. I decided to make this new body of work about the history of feminist media, which is something I taught about and something I made. I held 5 research meetings around the US. I listened to hundreds of women. Everyone had a different opinion, a different feminism, a different media. They were all really smart. I decided to focus on 18 demonstrative stories, each sort of loosely standing in for a category of work, a period of history, and embodied in our political positionality within feminist media. I interviewed my mentors and luminaries from my field, people like Carolee Schneemann, who later gave me her boots. I also interviewed people I knew intimately, like Juanita, or my at the time partner, the Black lesbian filmmaker Cheryl Dunye. That project evidenced my interest in what I now think of as queer feminist infrastructure, all the work that women do that supports making art and film, as curators, writers, producers, teachers, editors. I produced The Watermelon Woman in the 90s and co-founded and facilitated the international collective FemTechNet in the 2010s. Watermelon Woman just celebrated its 30th at the Berlinale, and FemTechNet is completing a 10th year chronicle co-edited for the University of Illinois Press. Feminist infrastructure is a way to think about process. Feminist and queer art, activist media comes from rich communities who do the maintenance work of building and repair, of the conditions of production and reception. I'd like to show you the first 5 minutes of this piece. In this instance, the form is rather traditional documentary, but the process and the living behind and after was anything but.
I have to start with the 70s because it was a period of tremendous creativity and tremendous ambition for people who were my age. And the ambition really took a different direction than the 90s. Maybe the 90s is, the perfect follow-up to the 70s in the sense that we were very interested in creating an infrastructure.
It's absolutely essential that we don't lose the struggle of this history, because the horrible thing is, especially for people of my generation, that it fucking never ends. You have to do it again. We already did that, yes, and again, and again.
Times are just as bad as they were in the 1970s. There's still, if you look at any movie set, you still don't see very many people of color or women on a shoot. And there's a reason for that, and that's because there's power in those images, and there's power in who controls the images.
I'm Alexandra Juhasz, and I'm a feminist media scholar and video maker. I've made educational videos about women and AIDS, and I produced the first African-American lesbian feature film. I've also taught hundreds of college students about feminist film and video. All of this work shares the goals of this documentary: to encourage women to imagine, and better yet, to image for ourselves the transformative power of our intelligence, desire, and anger. The 18 women interviewed here have done such work. Their diverse stories demonstrate the significant range of possible models for feminist action through film or video. Part 1 highlights women who first came into a sense of themselves in that cultural wasteland, which was the 50s and early 1960s. Then, only a few years later, they joined with others through the organized movements for social change and created an infrastructure of progressive community and organizations. This allowed the feminists who followed places from which to produce and knowledge that others had already been there before them. Since the late 1950s, Carol Lee Schneemann has been exploring the power of women's sexuality. Her intentionally transgressive art, equally shocking in the 1960s or the 1990s, represents the unspeakable, the unseeable. Using her own body as her primary medium, she envisions a self-confident, active, sensual female body. Because her work speaks so strongly to my students, the supposedly sexually liberated men and women of the 90s, I know that we still lack the fundamental possibilities that Schneemann represents in her immense body of film, performance, and visual artwork. Models for being a woman while choosing to live outside the crushing confines of the nuclear family and middle-class conformity.
My situation is that I consider that I was born a painter. There's never any choice for me. It's never been a career. I don't believe that my work has ever been supported except in the most minuscule ways. And I dog it out. I dog it out by scrounging around on the edges of my culture. What began to obsess me and be very clear was that there was no feminine pronoun and there was no feminine genital. That I was negotiating a universe that denied me authority as an authenticating voice and denied me the integrity of my own physicality. And this declivity, no pronoun, no genital, became kind of like the tripod on which my own vision would be balanced. My first film developed slightly after my first performative works are happening. And the crazy thing about fuses is that I'm not sure. I mean, the men lend me their cameras. The way they taught me to look in the camera was the way men could teach you so that you knew you were doomed. It was almost as if you were going to menstruate on it. They were so reluctant to lend me their cameras. So I had to take those cameras and put them so close to my body and do a mystical thing with them.
My most recent work, Please Hold, takes an archival turn and looks back at the media and the people from all the decades of my career from the position of an aging artist and a maintaining activist. I return to Juanita's deathbed video in Please Hold, but also the queer feminist community-based media she made over a long career. Here's 5 minutes from that work. It's in the middle of it, devoted to Juanita. No sound. Do you know what to do? It was working, right? Yeah. So weird. Do you mind if I open the computer? Yeah, that's fine. This before.
There you go. The hand.
I am leaving Roosevelt F-stop, Roosevelt Island. Today, I'm walking to Kohler because I'm going to visit Henry, who's living there still. And experiencing a great deal of grief and loneliness, loss of his beloved wife, Juanita.
Okay, Juanita, tell me why you wanted me to videotape you right now.
I want to leave a legacy. I want young women to understand where we came from and where we're going. We came from a era where people fought for our rights to vote, to not wear bras. Now we're in an era where nobody wants to vote. The young people don't want to vote. Young people don't wear bras. I want us to learn from that. If you forget where you came from, it can happen again. And the next era.
Gene was. Greg wasn't part of
Oh, he wasn't.
wasn't part of it yet.
I really want to hook up with them and hook up with Juanita.
Juanita's working for them now.
I know. And I want her to come to my next party and film it.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah, I think.
She would love it, but it's hard to get her to the city.
I know.
If I sit around and I don't do anything but sit and cry, it's not going to help those who died. It's better for me if I use their lives to get the message out that AIDS is still here, that people are still dying, that people are still suffering, that people are still not getting their benefits.
Well, that's very productive, Juanita.
Then one day, Alexandra Juhasz came in. She was a student. And she said, "You like working with me?" I said, "Sure." So, but there were 12 other girls. No, what it was. 4 other girls.
In WAVE?
Yeah.
Women's AIDS Video Enterprise?
Right.
Yes.
She gave us the cameras, which shocked me. And I was thinking, these cameras are going to get stolen.
Yeah.
But no, she was brave enough. I took the camera on the outside and I went out of my mind.
You did.
I was all over the screen, telling anybody I could see. Can I interview you?
So this is a reality. It's not something that you can just push back. But Muslims can't get it. And we have some people who died from it. And that's a fact.
That some of the myths about Asians not being affected by it are true. That there are people, 800 across the country and a quarter of that in New York City, Asian Pacific Islands.
My memory is whenever I was either part of a panel with her or helped co-organize it or went to support you, she would come in this kind of like frivolous, hilarious kind of like tornado last minute mold, and everything was made more difficult because the world is not supportive of people in wheelchairs. So everything was that much harder because of how inhospitable spaces are for people who have mobility issues. So that added to this kind of frivolity and this kind of eventness of it. And sometimes she'd show up in funny wigs and they would be askew, and you would ask if she wanted to fix it, and then you felt like what a dumb question that was, because why would she want to fix it? And then she would get on the panel and she would just actually say things that you're like, oh no, but that's actually really tender and vulnerable and powerful.
But now I got time. I'm retired. I can barely go out. I go to one dialysis, but now I can make the time again. Go out there and do that because there's people that need to be led. People have forgotten. I mean, when I was coming here, I was saying to somebody, "Oh, I'm going to do this thing," and they was like, "AIDS, is that still around?"
I don't know if this is going to come across as mean. It's not like I want to collaborate with everybody.
Right.
I wanted to collaborate with Juanita because she was that fierce.
Yes, of course.
And that able and that wise. And yet Okay. Okay. My queer feminist media praxis celebrates processes of knowing, loving, fighting, grieving, maintenance, and yes, dying. And I know fully that this works. It's not just a way to make art, but a way to live. Because through video, I met Alex, and we wanted to work together, another intergenerational, transnational queer feminist collaboration. And then in a loop that speaks louder than any manifesto or talk that I can give, she made a video about me and Juanita. And of course, I came here. And I will end with a short clip from that. You know, I believe that the magic, the wonder, the power, the meaning, the purpose, the excellence is in the process. Like right now, it's you and me talking. That's why, like, when we record that, it's better than not. And the things that get made after are important, but less important. So like the conversations that I had all around the United States were about the living of the thing we believe in, which is feminist community, which is feminist media community, which is, you know, making the world and the life and the conversations and the ideas, highlighting them, living them by doing it.
Juanita and I met when I organized a project to produce community-based AIDS educational video. Thus, at an earlier time, I was her mentor, and now she creates activist video for her children and community.
I'm actually beginning to think that in the history of women feminist filmmakers, that I'm one of the forerunners of the community video movement.
Love is not hate, but love is friends loving friends. Love is brotherhood. Love is women loving women. Love is men loving men. Love is women and men loving each other. Love is not hate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking us through that huge body of work. We've got some time for questions. So does anyone have a question for Alex? Yeah, please, Vicky.
So much of such a great oversight of feminism and queer feminism, both as an ethical framework, as you've talked about, but also as a technology. And you know, the methods that you talked about, you know, were so interesting, and just showing up. You know, oh, I loved Carolee Schneeman saying, you know, dogging it out, which was such another great way of kind of, you know, dogging it out. Yeah, exactly. But you know, more speaking to the anger and frustration of those, I guess, of that method, and the constant reiterative necessity of showing up. And you talked at the beginning about the incomplete, the perpetual incompletion of the project. And I guess I'm interested in how you keep showing up given that. And I know you talk about the relationships, and that's part of it, but can you maybe speak to that a little bit more, like how you don't just, you know, succumb to the exhaustion?
Me, Alex, you first. I mean, the thing is, I think that one of the things that's super interesting about that clip and that was that Carolee was so angry. I was shooting her, like, she's a generation ahead of me, so at that point I was 30 and she was in her 50s, I think. And when I interviewed her again and she gave me the boots, she was just getting recognition, like real recognition. So that led me to a body of work about thinking about, you know, why women only make it in our 70s and 80s and 90s. And she was not angry anymore, but anger fueled a lot of her work, and that generation and the generation. because just simply seen and unsupported and abused. But I think that's different from this question of showing up. So let's put it like sidebar there. I mean, I'm an extrovert. Like I'm a person with my own skills and limitations, and I am fed by these encounters, just endlessly fed right now. I'm curious, I'm hungry. It's not hard for me to show up. It's not easy for everyone to show up. So we sort of have to think about different modalities of being. But I think that one of the extreme punishments, negative forces of internet culture and life online and life post-Zoom is everyone's sense that they are too tired to do anything. And I think that that's a condition of late capitalism, it's a condition of fascism, it's a condition of hypermediality. And I think we have to look at ourselves and understand that's been produced onto us. And that doesn't mean we aren't tired. But we live in a culture of perpetual tiredness. And I think, so I'm happy that I certainly had to fight with that when I had long COVID, but I want to look at it critically. And generatively. And not like this, but like, why are we all tired all the time? And if we're all tired all the time, what are we not doing in the world? And we understand, we know that when we're together in the world, there are possibilities, and I include the world online. So I mean, when we do this online, not when we do this online. I think to connect it back to Carol Lee. So Carol Lee kept dogging at it, regardless of that she was supported, or regardless that she was famous, or regardless that anyone cared about her work, or any of that. She would dog it because she had to. Like that was sort of who she had to be. She said that. I'm dogged for different reasons. So maybe it's about getting in touch with our own doggedness, like where that comes from. If it comes from anger, if it comes from yearning, if it comes from some of you who just can't not be an artist. I can't not be in communion.
Or you can't not do the dishes.
And you can't not do the dishes. Well, you can, and it gets so disgusting so fast. And you can live with that if you want to, but it's hard to make work out of that. Although some people like it. So what do you say? I mean, I do think that I'm very interested as a feminist in these secular processes like maintenance, but also coming back and coming back and coming back. And each time you come back, you can see this reiterative nature of the work. It's fresh again. So the circles are not, loops are not circles. And so like, that's another way to think about doggedness or I don't know. These are such horrible times. And I think that, every small human encounter we can have is what we have. And we do have that. And they can't take that from us. And I live in the United States and it's just as awful as it's ever been. And they can't take that from us. They're taking a lot. And so that is a showing up. You have to show up to an encounter. And I think that our art, is an excuse to come together and help. And so we make art so that we can show up for each other. And we have to do that. It's so human.
Okay. Please.
I love that question. And I hope you will ask me to see my experimental feature documentary, Please Hold, because one of the things that happens in that video, so it's not just about Juanita, it is also about Juanita. It's about technologies of memory, and I'm interested in format change. And so a significant amount of that video happens in VHS, and a lot of it happens in Zoom. You saw the Zoom interview. And when I was working with the Zoom interview as material, I remembered something I had learned from Alisa Lebow. I hope you all know her, but she is an Ashkenazi Ashkenazi, Canadian, Indigenous woman filmmaker who's made like 80 or 100 films and has been making films for a very, very long time. And her theories about filmmaking are less, she doesn't call them feminist, they're indigenous filmmaking. And one of her most important theories of filmmaking that she told me, I did an interview with her not that long ago, is about always having the listener in the shot. And so if you look at the Zoom interview, and there's a lot of Zoom interview when you film, one of the things that you see is that you watch people listening. And I watch myself listening, which is really cool when I'm talking to my friends, and I watch my friends listening to me, which is really beautiful. And the traditional documentary never shows the listen. So in Alani's work, she always shows herself listening. And it's a practice. And it's a practice that you can get better at and think about, and to watch yourself do it is a really cool way to like work on your practice of listening. But certainly collaboration, right? There's some people that I met who are doing a project about their friendship as a community. You know, we know that the best friendships are ones where like sometimes we talk and sometimes we listen. And I think that that's the best. That is how we want to make media in the world, as an opportunity to listen and talk. See, that's the thing. I think that sometimes in our movements, we're told that our job is just to step back and listen. And that's the kind of like the next step in politicized or hierarchical relationships over time. And I think it's actually very important to talk and listen, for everyone to talk and listen. I mean, to do that with grace and sort of thoughtfulness, but it's a big responsibility to listen. It's also a big responsibility to talk once listened. So the practicality of that is very important to me as a process. So, yeah.
Anyone? Yeah, please.
In the back.
As a medium, something that because you've done it for so long, you return to, or is it something that like decision each time you work on the project?
So thanks for that question. Because I think a lot of your visual artists and make stuff. I've been saying for a while that I'm medium agnostic. I'm very interested in kind of letting the medium, the form that I'm using, be responsive to the question that I'm asking. When I define activist media, which is what I think I make, I say what's different about it and other forms of art making, which I like. It's not a judgment, it's just a definition. Activist media has a project, has a goal in the world in mind, and the medium should match that goal. And so I've used film, you know, you get a facility in a thing. I've used film and video for a long time. But when I was making my fake news poetry workshops, for instance, I moved to poetry. And part of why I moved to poetry was because I thought that, and this is in 2019, that the internet, the movement of media on the internet had drained media of its indexical quality, had drained media of its ability to be a truth-telling device. And I moved to a different format, a different medium, poetry, because I thought we couldn't use images anymore. I am of a mind right now, like I work on internet culture a lot as a thinker, but I make things in there that we can't use images or words anymore because everything has been evacuated of its power in that space. And so I'm very interested in thinking about dance and performance and the live arts, and I'm going to make things the thing things. Because the internet is a place where words and images go to die and turn into violence and turn into something for a billionaire to, you know, make a cent off of. So I'm really quite interested in what I was saying, like very small things that happen between people. I'm not against the digital. So the digital can be in there, but not on that man's internet. So, you know, one's medium needs to change in the time and with what you're trying to do. And what I'm trying to be is alive and, you know, decent and not a pawn of these corrupt villains. So I have to go to different spaces. And then if I'm in a different space, the medium I'm going to choose is going to be different. I think for young artists, that is the question. Like, where's the medium that you will choose that will let you be human with others? And I'm not sure it's me making film anymore, honestly, which is very sad to me. I like making documentary. And I know how to do it and I want to do it. So, you know, I think the weight of the world is on all of our shoulders. We have to reinvent ourselves, and this is part of it. Like, what is the form I'm going to use? What I'm going to do with it when I've made it?
Are there any other questions? I've got a question. I've been dying to know, you know, with Victoria.
Yeah.
And look, you don't have to answer this question. It's a personal question. How do you get invited? Do you meet somebody at a party and say, hey, do you want to share a house together? Or what to Art Farm? Like, how do these conversations emerge? Are they through the university? Do they operate more organically? Give us a sense of the context for the emergence of the collective in your practice.
Okay, so I mean, Art Farm, like, you can't go to Nebraska. It's very, very far away. But Art Farm is the weirdest artist residency in America, and I'm blessed and delighted that I had to go there. It's very strange. Okay, so I think I make activist media. I think I make feminist queer media, and where I go is where I am.
Yeah.
So where am I? What is the community I belong to? Where do I live? Who do I want to be friends with? Where do I want to be? That's where I make my art from. And typically then, in conversation with other people in the room about like what we might want to do or how we might want to do it. But I think that, especially for people who make documentary, and I'm not sure if that's what's slide in this room, there's often projects like going someplace else where you're not from, and letting that encounter change you. And it's beautiful, I'm not judging, but that's just not what I do. Like, I tend to make it from where I already sit. And so when all my work as an AIDS activist came from what I told you, like living in New York City when everyone was dying. And my best friend, who saw a tiny second of died of AIDS, when we were kids, and people around me were dying, and my queer community, was swimming in it. Mm. I was there, and I wanted to see it and know it differently than how it was being known in the public. So that's the other thing about activist media. It's like, you want to show where you're from because the dominant culture just judges you and sees you, as you aren't. And so I want to make media and art from like where I live and where I fight.
Yeah, I got it. Mm-hmm. Alex, on behalf of everyone here, just thank you so much for being with us. It's just a joy. It's very inspiring to be with your energy, your generosity, and your vision. Thank you so much for coming to the VCA and being part of Art Forum. Thank you.
Your hosting.
Oh, my pleasure.
And the invitation.
Thank you.